Hello and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotion, and today we're going to talk about selling cash services and additional services that patients actually want. And we're talking here with Tony Cere from Kinetix Physical Therapy. He co-founded this with his wife, Melissa, in 2008. With a mission to do things differently. And so now it's grown into 2 locations, 24 plus employees, and Tony's brought in powerful cash-based services like laser therapy, NeuFit, NutraMetrix, wellness programs, diagnostics, and he's having great results with this. So, his bold approach has helped Kinetix grow fast, stand out from the crowd, and stay strong no matter what the insurance world does. And he's also been with Practice Promotions since 2017. So, Tony, great to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's talk kind of big picture here. I'm just curious what made you and Melissa decide to start offering, additional cash services and different services alongside your traditional PT model.
Well, I think as all of us know, in private practice, reimbursement hasn't necessarily kept up with inflation, and the cost of doing business continues to go up. So in 2017 was when we first implemented laser, and that was a big plus for us. And then another thing, 2020 COVID, costs going up, not much changing with insurances. I did get into renegotiating insurance contracts too, which that has helped us a lot, but also looked at, what are some other things that we can offer. But the first thing that we started to offer as far as like cash-based services was the laser in 2017. So we bought one machine then, and it's expensive. So it was, we researched it. We talked to other owners who were successful with it. And the big thing is it was helping their patients, getting their patients out of pain and back to function faster, along with PT, your core PT. But, if you had something else that could help to get that patient out of pain faster and heal faster, and also financially help us with our bottom line, it was like a no-brainer. Like, hey, let's try this. But it is an expensive machine, and so we wanted to. And so again, we talked and researched and did a lot of that before we actually pulled the trigger and did that. But we decided to do that, and our first year we brought in over $100,000 from the laser, and the cost of that laser at the time, it was a 25 watt class 4 laser. Now we have all 40 watts. But the cost of that laser was $40,000. So we were able to cover the cost plus make $60,000+ for that first
That's awesome.
year. So that was a big help. And then I'm like, wow, let's get 2. So hoping that we double. We didn't quite double, but the next year we made about 140 or so just off of the lasers. So that having 2 made it a little easier to apply, especially when you had multiple patients in at the same time wanting the laser at the same time. So that was helpful that way. And we continue to grow. And last year with just laser, we were about 300,000. And then when you add in our other cash-based services, we were, just under 500,000.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that. And
yeah,
like I said, I think you're a real innovator in our space of just really looking at how can we add more value to what we're doing to our patients, but in the same time being able to offer those things in a way that goes beyond the insurance model.
Right. And so now, like you said, we've got it's 2 larger locations, and we've got 3 locations technically, but they're 2 are right next to each other. So we bought our original space and then bought the property next to us, built a new building. So both of those clinics are like just a larger space, and then we opened our other larger location in 23, and currently we have 3 lasers, and then we also brought in NeuFit to help patients, and we just started doing dry needling, so we've got that. We do foot levelers, and we have a wellness program. So those are our big areas, and then also diagnostics. So diagnostics, MSK ultrasound and EMG nerve conduction studies. We initially got got into that thinking that insurance would cover most of that. But what we found is about half of our diagnostics are not covered by insurance, so the patient's having to pay. So it ends up being a cash-based service as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting to hear. I'm sure that's very variable by state in terms of what's
It,
covered.
yeah, it is very variable by state and
Mhm.
area of the state. So in Florida, Blue Cross Blue Shield's a big payer of ours, and they don't cover MSK ultrasound or EMG. And for us, that's a big chunk of our patients. Now, in most states, they do. So most practices doing diagnostics don't have the same problem that we have there. But, it's not really necessarily been a huge problem. We've changed it and just, promoted it as cash
Hmm.
based service, if the insurance company doesn't cover it.
Yeah, and that's again, you're it's a service that's really powerful for the client, for the patient, right?
Right,
And
right.
helping them understand like what's going on with their body. You can really pinpoint particular areas. I mean, I've definitely been in the diagnostic world, and I know we've worked a lot with hands-on diagnostics, and
Yeah.
they do a
Yeah.
fantastic job. And it's just really cool to see what we can do now in our profession and being able to help patients and really pinpoint problems and model treatments around those things too. But being able to see you then making it more of a cash service because insurance may not cover it for a patient too is really fascinating to me, and it's very much needed, right? And I think patients are willing to, because we all know that we live in a high deductible environment right now, so patients are more aware that, hey, if I have to go for an MRI or diagnostic service, I may just have to pay out of my deductible anyway.
Right.
And so having to pay cash, that they're sort of expecting some of that.
Yeah, and the cool thing with the MSK ultrasound is, like, say you got a patient with shoulder problem, they come in, you evaluate them, you have a good idea what's going on, you do the ultrasound, you're able to pinpoint, okay, this is what's going on, this is the
Mhm.
severity of what's going on, and then the cool thing too is, most of those we're able to keep in PT and rehab. 6 weeks later, we do another ultrasound and we can see the changes. So being able to
Mm.
show the patient the changes is pretty big.
Yeah, that is huge. And so, how have you found having these additional services as more kind of more comprehensive care approach? How's that helped your overall like perception, your brand in through patients? What do you notice with that?
Well, I think patients in our area anyway, like they see the difference. Like, hey, we're a step above. Like we're innovative. And we look at ourselves as primary care providers. Patient
Mhm.
comes in direct access. We're able to evaluate them and help determine, okay, do they need to be referred to somebody else? And we work closely with other physicians. And if we need to refer somebody else out, we can certainly do that.
And so, and how would you say, like from a patient perspective, that kind of bigger holistic approach to patient care, do patients really gravitate towards that?
I would say most do.
Mhm.
Like, obviously you have some patients who choose not to, like, if it's not covered by insurance, not to go that route. But if patients see the value and they see it's going to help them, and it's not covered, but they overall see that value because it's the perception of the value that you give,
Mhm.
then they're more than happy and they're glad. They're glad to be able to get it done so quickly. Somebody comes in direct access, they're not having to wait to get into their primary care physician, and then also as far as diagnostic tests, we're able to get them in like usually within a week or two for
Mm,
that test. So like they're not having to wait a month,
yeah,
2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be.
that's really interesting because when you think about it, people are really willing to pay for convenience and speed.
Yep.
And I think that's a wonderful thing that you said. Just kind of looking at it from that perspective, that patients they want to have that one-stop shop. They want to be taken care of, and they don't want to have to go to another specialist or another diagnostic center or another MRI place. Like if they can have more in one spot and they know they don't have to wait long to figure out what's their problem so they can get it fixed, people are willing to pay for that for sure.
Yep.
And so I know you've been in different groups and things like that. How have in talking to other practice owners, um, have you had conversations with people that have been a little fearful about stepping into a cash paid model or adding these additional things, and kind of what things have you explained to them? What's been successful for you?
Yeah, I know that I've talked to some owners who, for example, maybe they purchased a laser, but they didn't really get it off the ground. Their clinicians didn't really promote it, or maybe even believe in it. So I think now it works, and there's tons of research on it. And that's a big key, is getting your team on board. And typically you got some people way up here that are just like ready to roll. They're good to go. You got some people in the middle, and then you got some people that are very resistant, because they may feel like, well, I'm able to do what I need to do with manual therapy. We're a very manual based clinic. We incorporate functional activities, Therex, manual therapy, but these other tools help just speed up that whole process. And it's just looking at, a big thing that we measure is graduation rate. How many of our patients come into us for an evaluation? How many of those patients actually graduate, finish their plan of care, PT? And, we want that percentage to be high. And when clinicians, if you're not really tracking that, and you ask a clinician, they may perceive it's higher than what it really is. And they go and they actually track, fall offs and those kind of things. Like, the idea here is you're giving that patient hope, and they're able to start seeing results quickly. And you've got to have a system in place to be able to make sure that's being done. So I think, for one, if somebody were to bring this in, they want to have a system of making sure it's implemented. And for us, for example, like the laser, what we do is we evaluate the patient on the evaluation day. We bring up the laser. We don't necessarily talk about it a whole lot. We bring it up as, hey, this is something we recommend. The second time they come in, and we talk about, we're going to do a trial. Second time they come in, as long as it's appropriate, which most patients it is, and unless it's not, there are contraindications and patients that you wouldn't do it on. So say they're okay to do it, and you do it on that second visit, that trial. What we have found is, on that trial day, for the therapist, in Florida, we can have techs do the laser,
Okay.
or the therapist can. Some states, the therapist has to be the one that does it. In Florida, we're able to delegate that. But either way, if it's a therapist or a tech doing it, following up, right after the trial, and seeing how that patient did. And some people, they notice a change right away. Some people don't notice a whole lot of change. And then just explaining that it's going to have a compounding effect, and how that works, and helping them to make a choice. You're not necessarily pushing them to do it. You're just educating them and letting them make that choice. But if you don't educate them, or if you just say, oh, you could do this, or not do this, then they're probably not going to do it, because they don't want to pay that extra money. But if you educate them on the benefits of doing it, and how that's going to affect their pain levels, their function, being able to get back to doing things faster, like you said, that's a value, right, to patients. So it's how it's implemented, how it's explained, how it's promoted, and how you follow up. Because if you just do the trial and you don't follow up, or you just let the patient choose and nobody's talking to them, then they may not do it. They probably won't do it. Some may do it, but you've got to have that follow-up system in place.
Absolutely. And so if I'm a patient and I come in, let's say for shoulder problem, things like that, then, I'm going to get my evaluation. I'll get some exposure to what you're going to recommend or do. And then that second time I'm coming in, you might do a treatment on my shoulder, and see if I feel, any difference with that, right? As we do that, and then probably explain to me that, like, this is going to help with soft tissue healing and faster recovery rates, and all that kind of good stuff. So then what happens from there? Does the therapist go over like packages, or is that handled by somebody else in your office?
So what we do is you do the evaluation, you do a quick summary, and all we pretty much say is the laser is going to help decrease pain, decrease inflammation, facilitate healing. Keep it simple. Now, some patients will ask, okay, how does it do that? Well, then you got to understand what's happening and be able to explain that to those patients. But a lot of people don't really get into that. Most patients don't ask those additional questions. But either way, you need to know that. But you want to keep it simple because you don't want to overwhelm them with information. But you want them to understand that it's going to help them get out of pain, get better, feel better faster. And I mean, there's no guarantees, but that's ideally what we're trying to do. And that second visit, they do the trial. The therapist follows up. They recommend, whatever package it may be. And we have packages of, you can do one, and we don't typically do that. And we also do a package of 3, which a lot of times we don't recommend 3, but we have 3 for those who aren't quite sure of the money, and it just helps them to get into it if they're unsure of that. But typically our packages are 6, 10, and 20. And, say for, a basic shoulder issue, we'd just say 6. And this is what we recommend. Well, they'll go through that series of 6, and who handles the financial aspects of that is the front office. So we just let the front office do that portion of it. The therapist recommends the number of treatments, those kind of things. Now, sometimes a patient will ask the therapist, how much is it? Well, that's the therapist can decide how to handle that. If they want to get into that, or if they just want to refer them to the front office. And with us, we also offer payment plans for patients. So we make it a little bit easier, so they're not having to come up with that whole package amount if that's an issue. What we also do, which I don't know how many clinics do this, but like say if we think somebody needs a package of 6, but they do a package of 6, and then they really need 10. We just charge them the difference between 6 and 10. We don't have them buy a whole new package. It's just that difference. So we try to do what we can to help patient financially and do what's best for them. And then in result, it's going to help us because we're getting that patient better. They're going to complete their plan of care. They're going to graduate. They're going to go out, tell family and friends, those kind of things.
Yeah, I like how you do that too, because it makes a lot of sense that your clinicians are the ones that are making the recommendation, and they're showing and explaining how it works and the benefit of that. But they shouldn't really have as much of the financial conversation. Like that should go to someone in the front office or office manager. Do you have anybody, like, is it just your front office that handles those kind of questions, or do you have like someone that actually helps with having conversations around payment plans, things like that?
Our front office does it, but like if it needs to go to a higher level, then we've got people in place to be able to answer those questions.
Excellent. Yeah, I also think that's key, especially if you're a little bit larger practice. Like who in the practice has the conversation with the patient about these other services, and obviously payment plans and things that can be done around that. And so having a well-trained salesperson, right, is really kind of that. The front office is always a salesperson. They're selling the appointments and coming in on time, and coming for your full plan of care. Like they're always selling there. So having them help with the financial conversations around the packages too is key, right? So it's not on the clinician to do that.
The top 10% of PT owners aren't just surviving, they're thriving. But what's their secret? Well, Neil Trickett's new Market to Grow book reveals how the top 10% of PT practices leverage marketing systems to simultaneously grow their new patients, attract top talent, and boost profit in their practice. You can learn from their secrets. Visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free copy of Market to Grow. Yes, you heard that right. We are shipping a free copy of Market to Grow to all podcast listeners who want it. Just visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free book. And now back to the show.
Yeah, and I would say as far as like the education about the laser, like you want everybody involved, not just your clinicians, because the front office is involved in that. And what we also do is we want any employee that we bring on to go through, like have a laser trial, like have a, for them to be able to fill it. Therapists, they have to understand how to do it, how to, they get a chance to fill it. But front office, same thing. We want them not necessarily to be able to do it, but like they need to understand, what it does and have felt it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so investing in the training of the team to be able to have those conversations with the clients is key to the success of of running
Yeah.
additional cash services.
Yeah. And I would say that's ongoing because, like, for example, we just had a boot camp. And we call it boot camp. It's just like a time. It's not our regular team meeting, but it's a time to dive into some deeper things. And what we noticed was, some of our therapists were not doing as great of a job as far as like their packages and promoting and that kind of thing. And during that boot camp, and we've had some new therapists come on board too. So like they go through training, but like they haven't had as much training as everybody else. And one of the therapists, what came out of her was like, hey, if it was me personally, I wouldn't do it because it costs more money. So if she believes that, it's going to be hard for her to like promote this. So then we did a role play and did some other things, and kind of going through all that, like she was putting herself as that patient, and that patient's in a different position than she is. There are some people who may not be able to afford it financially, but we don't need to make those assumptions. You have to let the patient make those assumptions, or make those decisions. Like in this particular patient, this therapist was talking about, as she gave an example. Well, it's because it's part of his goals was traveling, and I'm like, well, okay, if he's got money to travel, then like really the cost of this package is not that much. It's more the perceived value of what you're promoting, and that patient is perceiving it as far as the value. Like if he understands that, hey, this is going to help me get better faster, get out of pain faster, like maybe you're off of pain medications faster, maybe you're off of other things that affect side effects of medications, right? So you got all these other things that that can affect patients, and you really have to step back. Okay, if it didn't cost anything, would you promote this? And the answer was yes, for sure. But okay, then patients pay for their insurance. Like they pay a lot. I mean, we pay a lot of money for insurance. They have different plans, within that insurance model as well, and let them choose. Don't choose for them whether or not they are going to do this. And we are not. We don't want our therapists feeling salesy or anything like that, but you have to. I mean, I say that, but like you said, when you're doing an evaluation, you are selling that evaluation. You have, if it's going to help the patient, you've got to be able to promote that.
Yeah, and I think what you just said there is like the perfect example of why clinics may fail at cash services or trying to add something on, is because they are operating off a fixed idea, or their team is operating off a fixed idea. And if you don't ask, if you don't dig in, you may not find out that that's what that person is feeling like. Hey, if I was a patient, I wouldn't pay for this. Well, that's a fixed idea, right? And you didn't know about it. Well, they sure aren't going to sell it for you, right? And I remember in my clinic too, like I had those conversations with our therapists around the plan of care, right? And actually doing sales training with them and getting them to realize that they are not only practitioners, but they're actually selling their service, right? And if a patient doesn't come for a full plan of care, if they drop off early, they're not getting the full benefit of coming for care, and they're not going to be a true advocate for you and the practice because they may have gotten okay results, right? They may not have gotten great results. So I think it's important for us to realize that we hate to say it, but we are salespeople. Everybody's always selling, right? And we got to sell our services. And to me, I think what you've managed to accomplish here is you've looked at what other solutions are there beyond just manual therapy that can help have a better outcome for patients. And using laser, using nutrition, using diagnostic testing, like all these things help us get better outcomes and results. And so being able to sell our therapist, our professional team on what this whole approach, the why, right, behind it. Once you can get that buy-in of the why, the resistance of offering it and the money and the mechanics of it come down, right? They just get better.
Yeah, and I think you said an important thing there, and I think a lot of therapists they think they don't want to be salesy. Like you said, we are selling our services, just the evaluation itself and PT, you're selling that. And so I do think like additional continued training in that arena is important, because it's all these services that we offer are going to help our patients. And you've got to be able to promote that and get that through so patients can make that choice, whether or not to add those things. And what we do is we try not to call it cash-based services, even though that is what we're talking about here. We call it PT support services. So it's like your additional services, like you said, it's all going to benefit the patients. But for some reason, I think a lot of clinicians do have a negative connotation to the whole sales thing, but it is what we do, So like, I think part of that is just also getting people to change their mindset on really what that means, because you're already a salesperson, with evaluating a patient and selling a plan of care. You're already doing it.
I think that's fascinating the way that you change the phraseology for it, because that might get better buy-in if people, there's that we always have that weird feeling of asking for money when we're giving people care, right? As I think I don't know, it's just something maybe we're ingrained in from PT school or something. It takes some time to get that out of our system. But yeah, not even using the word cash-based services. Well, we might know it as cash-based services, but to your team, calling it was it PT support services?
PT support. And I have to give credit to Melissa on that one, because she's like, we need to just stop calling it cash-based services, because it's PT support services. that's what it is. And
I like that.
I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to position it too to your team, because we have our traditional physical therapy model, right? And then we have all these other capable services that we can offer, these ancillary services to our ancillary service, right? So I think if we can position it that way to our team, we might get better buy-in. And I really like what you have done there to do that. So I'm curious, you have this model that you started off with the laser therapy, and obviously the way that you trained your team, the way that you package it, position it. I'm curious, was it pretty similar to do the other things, say like NeuFit or NutraMetrix, the other services that you have in there? Has it been kind of modeled off of that original laser model?
It is. With the newbie and NeuFit, we don't do we don't do a trial with most patients. It's more of the patients that they feel like, because we try to make sure, because the laser's pretty easy to implement, and we can delegate that to a tech, so it makes it easy for the therapist too with their schedules. And not all states can do that, but it doesn't take that long to do 6 minutes or so to do a laser trial. Add a couple minutes to get situated there. But with like newbie, we've just left it up to therapists, and if they feel like the patient would benefit from it, then they can do a trial with no cost associated with that trial. And what we've done too with the newbie and laser, we just have the bundles the same. So like, say if somebody buys a 10-pack, they can interchange. They can do 6 lasers for newbies. They can do it that way. And because what we have found is some patients really benefit from the combination of both. Maybe initially laser, and then they start moving toward newbie, or it's a combination. Initially laser, and then a mixture of laser and newbie. And patients that have done both, they love it.
Yeah, that's a great combination. It's nice to be able to have that offer for patients too, like gives them choice, right? And I think when patients have choice, they're more willing to participate in those support services. Just kind of curious for you too, like with the with adding these different on, do you see other services you would want to add on into the future?
So right now we've got, like I said, we got the class 4 laser, we've got the newbie. We just started at dry needling. That's a little bit, so with the dry needling, only the PTs are doing that. And with that one, we've considered packages, but right now we're just doing single session. And then the price drops. If somebody does like after 10, the price drops. But a lot of people are only getting, 1 or 2 sessions, and they're getting results with that. So other things that we've considered adding on, which we've looked at for years now, is shockwave. So we've looked at the radial and the focused shockwave, or both. We did have that in the clinic for a little while and trialed it, and we got good results. But the concern when we brought that in was we were also looking at newbie, but we ended up bringing in newbie, and the concern was like having too much stuff, like too many like things to pick from. So the laser is comfortable. Patients like it, feels good. Shockwave is a little different ball game, not usually as comfortable, but people get really good results with it from what I've gathered. So I do think like it'd be a nice thing to add on eventually. I'm not sure when we'll add it on, maybe in the next year or two.
Got it. Well, that's really cool. And so what other things that you have for increasing like the lifetime value of a patient with you? Is it the supplements? Is it so you have some like wellness programs too? Is there anything that you do like post discharge for a patient?
So yeah, we have a wellness program. So like in that we could do a better job of promoting and implementing. We do have it going on, but we, like anything, you could always improve what you're already doing. But I feel like that's a real good one for those patients who aren't quite ready to be off on their own, but they're past the point of like rehab. They want to kind of bridge between, us and maybe go into a regular gym. We do have some of our wellness patients that's been wellness patients for a long time. And then when something happens, of course, they're coming to us for PT. So it's just more of a service that we offer.
Okay.
And I think, for those patients that do it, that's who they're going to think of for PT is us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think what I've seen too, like you're definitely on the cutting edge of the hybrid model, the change that we need to be doing in the PT industry here, the rehabilitation industry, in terms of this model of core services, PT support services that we can offer for cash additional services, and we're coming out of just the pure insurance model into this hybrid model. And part of that is taking what works in other industries and incorporating that into what we do. And so I think if we look at what do other industries do to give more value to their customer and to also increase the lifetime value of that customer, we look at cross sells and we look at upsells. And so, in the sales world, you're looking at, okay, as someone comes in, what other things do they need to get a better outcome, right? And that's going to be cross-selling our lasers and cross-selling these other things. And then, that's more like cross-selling on that. And then upselling for additional, packages or programs, things that we can offer there. I think, too, we got to really look at the profession of how do we become that health and wellness profession for our patients for life, right? And really kind of mimic that dental model where people are coming in for tune-ups and they're continuing care with us. People are really wanting to feel better. They want to live longer. They want to be healthier and live longer. And so what kind of services are we going to provide for the future for those patients and not just let them go at discharge? Give them the opportunities. And we've had some great conversations with people in the industry that are incorporating, stretch programs, wellness programs, all these other cool things that we can do to keep people healthier longer, right? And we can also add that to our revenue stream as part of it.
Yeah, and I think that kind of comes along the lines of that primary care provider, like you're helping to look at them holistically, like, what else can we do to help you be healthier?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for your laser services, for your other services too, have you done mostly internal marketing for that with your team, or have you done any additional campaigns marketing wise for those programs?
So we work with Breakthrough, Chad Madden and their group, and so they've got campaigns, set up with email sending out, also just Facebook ads and that kind of stuff. And so we've done that, and I'd say most of our results are internal. Patients that come to us for an eval, but we also do get some patients that call in. It could be, even our past patients, if we're doing a promotion with laser, that, hey, I'd like to get set up for that. But usually if they need to get set up for that, they've got some kind of problem they need
Right.
addressed with PT. So you get them in for the evaluation and get them set up for PT as well. So it's helped to, get patients in the door as well.
So you say like the thing that really moved the needle for you is a lot of the internal training, the way the processes, the mechanisms, the asking patients, and for adding on those additional services.
I would say that's the majority. Like
Yep.
patients, like we have um, yeah. I mean, the other helps too because you have patients interested. Okay, would this help me or not help me? Just to come in, and then we get them set up for PT as well. But then also just patients coming in for PT, and then offering these services.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. And so I think for, again, where people might get stuck out there is if they add these services on and then think that they have to go and heavily market externally for it. I think you got to look internal first, right? And get your nuances and your processes done there is key.
Majority, I'd say the majority of of our lasers or other cash-based services is more just from patients we already have coming in the door,
hmm
and then they're adding these services on. But I mean, as far as external marketing, it is something that you could offer to help get interest of coming in.
And then I'm kind of curious from that internal marketing perspective, have you done anything for like takeaway marketing for the patient? So you obviously show them, you have them test it out. If they're having a conversation with the spouse, do you have like brochures or rack cards or anything like that internally, or even just like up on your website for patients to go and have different conversations with their partners?
All of that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
use all that, and then we'll take all that information to physician offices as well. So we've got a lot of we do a lot of direct access marketing, but we also we still go to physician offices and drop off information, and we got a lot of good relationships with physicians. So it's nice to have that information, but nice for the patient to be able to take something, physical that they can have and they
hmm
can show their family members. And I mean that in the PT world, you evaluate somebody in the family, they get results, and next thing you know, you're seeing the husband and the kids and the
Yeah.
grandparents and all that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the benefits that we have to build such a great rapport with our patients that they trust us with their family to take
yeah.
care of them or friends and or colleagues, right?
Yeah, and I would say, piggybacking on what you were talking about, just transitioning to the hybrid model, it is key. That along with working through your insurance contracts and, dropping low payers if you need to, renegotiating contracts. There's two local clinics in our area, one in Gainesville, one in Ocala, that recently they're going out of business, just in part of, and they've been in business 20 plus years, so like it's happening, if people aren't doing this other stuff, there's not enough money coming in from what we get paid
Right.
with insurance to pay for all the costs, the overhead costs, and what therapists want to get paid.
The only constant is change, right? So we have to change with the times. We know the healthcare industry is very rapidly evolving and changing. We know the insurance world is evolving and changing. We know that insurers don't want to pay, for kind of care services anymore. They're kind of going to that, acute emergency model, I think. And so they're putting more of the burden back on the consumer to pay for, the regular stuff, right? And so I think what we have to look at is how do we help be direct to consumer? How do we help the consumers, in this environment? And people, if you had said this, say 10, 15 years ago, it would have been a very different story because people still were very heavily reliant on their insurance, and the expectation that they had was that my insurance was going to cover things, and I should have a very low copay, I should have a very low deductible. Not today. People are used to like big deductibles, high copays. They realize they have to pay a lot out of pocket just to get regular care. And then my insurance is there if something really bad happens. So
Right.
I think our public perception has changed dramatically. especially since COVID too, in this health and wellness space, and just in regular healthcare, that they're having this out of pocket experience now, right? And so
Right.
people are I think less resistant to those conversations than they were, say, 15 years ago, when
Yeah.
you were talking about a hybrid model.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And, another thing that we didn't hit on, like we talked about costs going up, therapists wanting more money. This is a way we incentivize our therapists too. Like they get, um, something for
Hmm.
any amount of packages that they're selling. So, and the idea is not for them to do it for that reason, but
Yeah.
we want to share the income coming in because it helps the clinic, and they're wanting increased pay as well, so it also helps them. But we also want to make sure anything that we're promoting is for the benefit of the patient.
Right.
And we haven't seen anybody like it's more of the other way around. Like they're not promoting it enough, kind of thing,
Hmm.
versus promoting it too much.
Yeah. And I think that's 100% right, that you have to incentivize for that. And we want to pay our therapists well. We want them to grow with the company, want them to grow in their pay. How do we help fund that, right? And we have
Right.
to do it through increased revenue. We have to do increased, reimbursement per visit, reimbursement for the plan of care, these additional services. So yeah, you're doing the right things, like how are we negotiating our insurance contracts, right? We're getting patients in that have the better paying insurances, and we're dumping the insurances that are, don't value us that well. And then how are we providing ancillary services, support services that are cash based, to increase that value per visit? And I love it. Incentivize your therapist to do that for you, right? And then gives them a lot of freedom to manipulate their own income, right? And if they are great with patients and they're good at selling their services and good at selling, additional support services, they can do well.
Yeah. And, kind of tying back to promoting these services to our past patients, and also cold traffic, like practice promotions using your company. Like you asked about rack cards, we use your service for that. The newsletter, we put information out there with that, and all that helps to continue to drive patients in. And one of your biggest assets is your past patient list, right? So you got to do something to keep that engagement, because patients, out of sight, out of mind, but like they had a great experience. You want them to continue to think of you whenever something happens and they need PT.
100%. Yeah, like you said, your customer list is your biggest asset in your practice. And when you sell your business, that's probably one of the biggest things that people look at, is how big is your customer list and repeat customers and things like that. So it's really important to grow that in your practice. And how are we communicating these programs and these offerings and these things to our patients, whether they were just in or they were in 3 years ago, right? They may not know that you added all these other additional services unless you're communicating to them often. And we have to do it in today's world through many different means, right? We have to be doing it through social, doing it through email, doing it through our website, doing it through direct mail even, right? So, and I really like what you've done to approach this with the internal marketing. So when it comes to cross-selling and upselling, it's really done the best when it's internal marketing. And so you need support assets for your team to be able to explain that, to be able to continue to have something in a patient's hands when they go home. So all the great things that you told them about, it sticks right in their head. They
Right.
got something to reference. And so having rack cards, having brochures, having really branded, professional looking materials inside of your practice helps all those conversations happen. And it's really a key thing for expanding upon these additional services you can offer in your practice.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Tony, you've given us great insight today, and congratulations on your success and really being innovative here in our space. I know that you continue to do fantastic here, and I'm excited to hear as you look into new services that you can provide within your clinic. I'm excited to see, the future for Kinetix Physical Therapy and what that looks like.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. We are too. And we appreciate all your help.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. And so for our listeners out there, thank you for listening to the Practice Marketing Podcast. Hope you got a lot out of today's podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you can get more episodes, as well as check out our YouTube channel. We got tons of great interviews on there too, so you can subscribe on there. And then at practicepromotions.net, we've got tons of great downloads and videos and training tips for you how to market your practice. So this is Neil Trickett from the Practice Marketing Podcast, wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.